Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya il mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, in the previous video I have explained to you how our cellular body, brain, mind and spirit connection within the framework of how neurologically we process information, and how at a higher level this information is not only coming from our thought, feelings and emotion, the TEF cycle, but is coming from the higher realm, that is the consciousness coming from the realm which we can call it the realm of FET, feelings, emotion and thoughts, coming from the realm of Roh, Qalb and Akal, Al-Kulli, that is giving us additional information in terms of tawfiq, hidayah, goodness, love, mercy, compassion, all those values, intrinsic values of being a human being, which is not external, not something that you learned, but it is internally generated within the framework of this deen and the way of life in which Allah tells us how we interact with this world. So we know that Allah gives us 100 billion neurons in our brain, and our brain cells, our neurons, are connected to other neurons. So through synapses, they are connected to 100 trillion synapses. That means every single one neuron is now connected to 1,000 to 10,000 other neurons. So the more they fire together, the more these neurons fire together, they act together, the more it reinforces memory and learning, whether it is positive or negative. For example, if it's a trauma, then you are reenacting the neuron play all the time until it becomes part of you, that become filled with anxiety or depression. So all our brain then is not alone, because our brain is just one part of us, but we have our human body, more than 50 trillion cells that is interacting, receiving the signal from the heart to the brain. So we have now the heart-brain coherence. All right, we have even the guts. You have guts feelings, the guts to the brain. We have neurons in the guts, human body, that is giving connection to the brain. All right, so we have higher and lower level connection. For us, we are not only having the connection within our physical body, we have the connection to other people. That, for example, if we say we love our children, that is another entity. They have exactly the same thing. Our children, our spouse, or our family, or our society, or all humanity, they are all different entities, but each of them carry the same brain. They have brain, they have synapses, they have the body, but the concept that is coming in is in terms of love, peace, happiness. All those are information coming from the realm of the Qalb that is infusing to us in a way that brings us towards fulfillment in this world, success in this world, happiness in this world, and so on. That's why from the Islamic perspective, inshallah, if we understand this whole concept further, how this action potential is being triggered and so on, I'm going to give you a further explanation to that. Then I'm bringing you towards an idea that actually we have the potential for self-healing. That means all that Allah has given us in terms of the neurons, in terms of the synapses, in terms of the hormones, in terms of the neurochemicals, are acting together to trigger action potential. And I'm going to explain to you how this action potential is working within our neuron, and how they can actually be used as a basis in which we can then transform and reform our thinking process towards a higher thinking. All right, so if we look at how cells interact, all right, assuming now this is we are talking about our neuron. So our neuron, this is the mother cell, the soma, and it is connected to another neuron through the pathways where you have the myelin shield. So this neuron at the resting potential is at minus 70 millivolt. All right, so this is at minus 70 millivolt. All right, so the action potential is at resting. This is a resting potential. Alright, so if we look sideways at a neuron where they have gates, along the way they have all kind of gates. We have lead gate channel, we have voltage channel, we have chemical channel, we have neurotransmitter channel, and within the cells, alright, the information that is going through the transfer of sodium and potassium and chloride. So we have the positive and negative charge. So each neuron is like a mini battery. At resting, it is at minus 70 millivolt. When it is activated, it reaches a potential of 55 millivolt, then it will goes up. And at 30 millivolt, you will trigger, and then it will then go down. So we have the excitatory. When we get excited, there will be excitatory, we get inhibition, that inhibition in terms of the neurochemicals. So, for example, neurochemicals like serotonin gives you peace and calmness. Neurochemicals like cortisol, all right, or adrenaline goes into the system, cause you to get agitated. So, your neuron now is at resting potential at minus 70 millivolt. It will stay at this point. So, at level 1, it will stay at that point. All right, when it receives the signal, whether the signal potential is high enough or not high enough, the action potential will then trigger, all right, up and down. And at this point, it is at resting potential, number 1. Then it goes into the gradient potential, number 2. And then at number 3, then it sends out the signal to the other neuron and all the other synapses. That is, we have the more than each neuron is connected to 1,000 to more than 10,000 synapses. So they are getting chemical information. So this whole trigger is getting the whole sum total of information from the neurons, from the synapses, from the lead channel, voltage channel, chemical channel, and then we are all working together. So when this potential is balanced, it is at minus 70. When it is triggered with sodium, potassium, and chloride, and also the neurotransmitters, all the neurotransmitters that you have here, all right, they have all these through the action of ATP, it will then trigger, because all these need energy. That's why the brain use more than 25% of your energy, all right, 80%, in some senses 80% of energy. So it will just trigger and trigger and trigger, and this whole trigger is taking place. This I'm showing you one. Every second you have billions and billions of trigger that is going out in your brain. Billions of this trigger. I'm showing only one action potential. There are billions of action potential that makes you who you are, in terms of your memory, in terms of your thoughts, in terms of your feeling. So the thoughts that is generated gives the electrical spike. So we are actually working on a biochemical electrical system. Our brain is that. All right. So when we understand this, then we'll understand that basically Allah gives us all the potentiality to control our lead channel, to control our voltage channel, to control our electrochemical channel. That means to control our neurotransmitters, and to control all the movement of our flow of the cells, whether it is from the heart to the brain, or whether from the intestine, the guts to the brain, and so on. And the whole system is working together. So this is just one example of how the neuron work. And there's a lot of research in terms of how this is being triggered through the myelin sheath to the next neuron and to other synapses. These are the synapses point, and that whole thing become the sea of information, which is either positive or negative. So if you have that sea of information, the billions of transaction that's taking every second, all right, this from the brain to the synapses to your body. If you are stressed out, then you have cortisol and adrenaline. If you are at peace, you have dopamine, and you have serotonin and oxytocin and the others. But there are more than 200 types of hormones and neurotransmitters within the system that is interacting with your body cells, your brain cells, with the synapses, and all of them are creating new chemicals. So what I'm driving at is that this action potential that I explained to you before is triggered by your thoughts within your brain. So if you have a negative thoughts, that negative thoughts is going to connect to more synapses. and that become part of you. So it becomes a behavior and a habit. That's why perception in our PIP model, if you study our PIP model, your perception is influenced by your environment, whether it's a physical environment, your diet, and the food, clothing, shelter, and so on. Then your internal dialogue within you, intrapersonal and interpersonal. So all these things affects you, and then it can harm you or it can heal you. Alright, so I'm trying to drive to the point that if we are putting in a lot of positive connections to our neurons and our synapses, and we're getting a lot of positive information from the realm of al-akal al-kulli, from the roh, qalb and akal, to help us, the barakah, the nur from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the love from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All this is affecting us, affecting the brain. So our brain is not standalone because we are part of this universe, and in this universe Allah has created the pool of information coming from the external realm to our internal realm and can influence us. Internally, yes, we are being influenced by ourselves, our society, our thinking. So if, for example, a person who has anxiety or depression, the more anxiety that they have, the more they will trigger like neurons. More and more of the brain, their neurons will be then dedicated towards anxiety. If they are in depression, more and more of the neurons is dedicated towards depression. So that's why they get depressed, more depressed, more depressed. And all these things now is because we have no connection with Allah. Why somebody is having anxiety? Because he has no purpose or no meaning in life. His anxiety because he may have cancer. He may be facing death. He don't know what to do. So he is having anxiety. Or he may have depression because somebody passed away. For that person, somebody say the mother passing away is a great calamity that they cannot get out of it. That's why in terms of all problems of psychology, in terms of anxiety and depression, the subset of anxiety and depression in the modern world, it is getting out of control in the Western world. They have enough food to eat, they have enough clothing, they have iPhone, they have cars, they have everything, yet they are not happy. They are getting more and more anxious, more and more depressed, and more suicides, killing themselves. So why? They have disconnected themselves from the realm of the roh, from the realm of the qalb, from the realm of the akal. So we Muslims must not fall into the same trap, because if not, then our society will end up just like the meaningless, atheistic Western society. We want a meaningful, spiritual life that is good in this world and in the hereafter. That's why all the time Rasulullah teach us about this dua, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah. We want the hasanah of this world, wal fil akhirati hasanah, and the hasanah of the spiritual realm, which will live beyond life in this physical world. And we would then achieve all that if we understand that there is a mechanism for you to actually overcome your depression and anxiety without any chemicals and without any drugs. If you can then tune your action potential, your neuron at the resting, graded potential action, the action potential at resting, and then graded potential, and then trigger point, and then how, using this understanding of each and every one of your neuron, to tune them towards coherence, which I have explained in the previous video, inshallah. So when we understand that, we'll understand that we have this potential to heal ourselves of all psychological problems, and inshallah in the next video I'll explain to you how we can self-heal ourselves from all chronic diseases like diabetics, heart diseases and others, inshallah.